Lots of people talk about chasing their dreams, but how many actually do it? Welcome to the Pursue Your Passion podcast with Tyler Kammerman. We're going to introduce you to people who are intentionally pursuing their passion every day. Through their stories of success and their struggles, you'll gain insight into how to better begin or continue your journey. Now here's Tyler with today's guest.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pursue Your Passion podcast. This is Tyler Kammerman with you always. I have three guests with me today. I know you're used to one. I think maybe I had a couple one time, but today I've got a trio. These guys are established professionals in the central Iowa area, but probably the main reason that we're talking today is because of a book that they wrote. So Tony, Jeffrey, Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Awesome. So give you all a little background. So Tony Thelen is the Chief Product Officer for John Deere Financial. His 34-year career includes a wide variety of leadership roles spanning manufacturing, sales, marketing, operations, technology, strategy, and finance. Lots of stuff going on there in Tony's career, but he and his wife Sheila have three daughters. He currently fishes and writes from his home on West Okoboji Lake in Northwest Iowa. As most people from Iowa know, Okoboji is a beautiful place, and I have to admit I'm a little jealous that I don't have a place there. So that's good stuff. Matthew Mitchell is an associate professor of international business and strategy at Drake University and a founding partner of Baton Global, a consulting firm providing strategy, innovation, leadership, and research services that transform organizations worldwide. Matthew is a world traveler, and he and his wife, Betsy, have three children and currently live in Des Moines, Iowa, and are in the same Boy Scout troop as my son. So that's a little fun fact for everybody listening. Jeffrey Kappen, I didn't check. Okay. Yes. All right. Jeffrey is a founding partner of Baton Global, a research-driven advisory firm, as we already mentioned. So Jeffrey and Matthew are partners there. They do a wide variety of things. And just to throw out my personal connection there too, I actually heard Jeffrey give a presentation when I was a part of the 2021 West Des Moines Leadership Academy, which, if we're going to dig way back, is actually the impetus for the podcast on which we are now speaking. So welcome, guys. I know I chopped your bios a little bit, but you're all way too accomplished for a guy like me. So I just had to, bring you down to my level a little bit.
Easy peasy. I think the shorter the better. Be brief, brother. Be brief.
That's right. Yep.
So I love that you guys are. I mean, Matthew and Jeffrey, you're business partners. But I love that the three of you got together to write a book. And the first question that I almost always lead with is tell us about the passion or passions that you're intentionally pursuing right now. And knowing a little bit about your guys' background, there's probably a bunch of those going on outside of this book. So I guess I'm gonna narrow that question a little bit and ask that question. Where did the passion for this book come from?
Yeah. Hey, I'll dive in on that one, Tyler. And it started out of COVID in the late 2019, early 2020. And I sat down and I decided there was too much going on around the world where I really didn't have any control of, and I needed to stay positive and constructive. And I decided I'm going to write a book and put everything I can in there, and all of my 30 plus years with John Deere and all that I've learned over that time frame, and to help other people in their career, as so many have poured into my career. And that's really where it started, with a simple survey. It started with a simple outreach to some established authors, and that got the ball rolling. Eventually that summer, I got a lot of input and I started to get some traction around what that book might be, but I kind of got stuck and I really had too much information on my hands and I didn't know where I was going to go. And that led me to meeting Matthew and eventually Jeffrey. And the three of us came together in the fall of 2020. And that's really where the book took off, and we really got closer to a publisher. We got a lot of work together to figure out what it was going to become. And amazingly, Tyler, the first year and a half, we worked entirely remotely and didn't meet each other on this. We found a publisher, we
Wow.
got the entire book kind of cast, and then we finally met together, and the rest is history.
That is cool. Matthew or Jeffrey, when this idea was placed before you, how did that line up with maybe where your passions were at, or was this a, hey, we really had to think about it, or was it kind of like the idea got presented and it was, we're in?
Jeff, I'll jump in. I mean, I think when Tony called, it was clear that the guy on the other end of the line was a serious citizen, a solid citizen, somebody I mean, honestly, at the beginning of a pandemic, would love to hang out with and to learn from. And I think that's been proven out over time. There's in some ways um, a, a a leadership magnetism. There's definitely a style, but I think we were able to sort of see a vision for a book. He had a tremendous amount of data, and he had a community that was willing to pour out their stories for about what they've learned over the course of their lives,
That's huge.
what how it has impacted them, maybe even some painful stories about regret in their lives.
Mhm.
And when you have someone like Tony that has the trust of a community to share their stories, I think we felt the responsibility to honor those stories, to tell those stories so that others could hear them as well. And that was an easy decision. We have some skills as teachers, professors, scientists, social scientists about how to write, maybe how to analyze some qualitative data, and that's where I think it was an easy yes, and it's been a yes sort of every day since that time.
That's awesome.
I will add that about every other year, Dr. Mitchell shows up with a new idea. Hey, Kappen, you want to do this? And I just keep saying yes, and we haven't had a bad experience yet. On top of that, we spend a lot of time working with young professionals, a lot of time with young adults aged, 18 to 22, 23, 25. And the idea for the book, the topics that came out of the data are the questions that people are asking us every day. And we try to help as many of them as we can, but we know they have follow-ups and we know they want more information. And I think back to my own career as a first generation college student and stumbling into corporate America, and the need for this material, the value of it to help people get on the right path and design their own adventure in a way that we hope will lead them to a fulfilling life, was a very compelling and easy value proposition for us to get behind.
Yeah, that's great. When I quick little sidebar, I when I decided that I wanted to do a podcast called Pursue Your Passion, I read a New York Times or Washington Post article, basically focusing on why telling young kids to pursue their passion is the worst advice you can give them. And so it made me like second guess the title, but then I processed through it on my own. I'm like, yes, I agree with most of the assertions that this guy is making, because it was basically like, well, if you just go after what you're passionate about, you're either going to end up, penniless, or it's just not the right way to. Well, that, and most 18 to 25-year-olds don't. I'm making a blanketed statement now. A lot of them, that's a better way to say it. A lot of them don't know what they want to do, so they start going after something, and then they don't know how to fail, and there's all these things. I mean, it was a well-written article, but where I was coming from with the podcast is I'm like, yes, I agree, but sometimes, a lot of times even, pursuing that passion isn't your job. It's something outside of your job that excites you and maybe even makes you do better work at your job. So anyway, that not necessarily 100% aligned with the book, but like, I just hear what you're saying, and seeing where those correlations are, or maybe are not. But one thing that I was definitely interested in, is most of the time, I shouldn't, again, a lot of the time, it's one author writing a book, or maybe two. How do you feel like the process looked differently working as a trio rather than, one sole author?
More fun.
It was enriching for sure, and we got a similar question to that last year around how did it change from when you started and had the original vision to where it ended. And I got to tell you that it was definitely a lift to bring Matthew and Jeffrey into the process, and it made a better product at the end of the day. There's only so much that I can pour into from my experience. There's only so much that you can draw from the experience of others. But the tools and techniques, which are largely Matthew and Jeffrey's section of the book, um, just made it such a solid product when you think about navigating these 18 key points in a solid start to a good career and a fulfilling life. And that's what made it. When I started to see that take shape, I could see that we had something on our hands.
That's great.
I'd sort of echo that, and just to give listeners a little bit of an overview, I think we start off each chapter with a story from Tony's personal life. I mean, that story brings that particular lesson to life. Things like goal setting, things like, how do you find your purpose, Tyler? Things like, how do you work in teams, or how do you overcome adversity and build resilience? And so he brings that to life in a very personal way. And then I think Jeff, as social scientists, as folks that are in research, we took that story and rooted it in sort of a foundation of leading practices, best practices, maybe, and give the reader just a few tips about how to sort of figure out their own perspectives and figure out their own opinions about those issues, so that they can put that lesson into practice. And then I'll just sort of close out by saying, then the next sections are telling the stories of almost over 1,000 leaders that shared their stories with us, that relate to that lesson and bring it to life again in their words. So, we're three guys, right? But we have just a tremendous diversity of leaders represented in the book that tell the story in their own words. And those are fantastic. Then every chapter concludes with reflection questions.
That's great.
And Jeff, I mean, you could tell them about sort of, we want the reader to be the fourth author, and those reflection questions are tremendous. And I know Jeff and
Yep.
Tony sort of contributed that as well. Jeff.
Well, I was going to say that I think feedback from readers has been one of the most compelling parts of the design, and it was actually an idea that came to us fairly late in the process, was making the reader the fourth author, very intentionally calling it out in the introduction, putting space in the book for people to write, encouraging them to use it as a workbook. Several people, students on campus, people just walking around Des Moines, have stopped me and said, I love that I participate. It's not just a book that I read and then put on the shelf and forget about it. It's something I can go back to, and they think about the questions. So I think in terms of how the book evolved, that it was towards the end, but I think it may end up becoming one of the most compelling features, is this open and explicit invitation for them to join us in the book as a fourth author, and to join us on social media. People are tweeting at us and putting messages on LinkedIn. And that, I think, allows us, who knows if there'll be another edition, another book, et cetera, but there's more material for sure out in the world, and more experiences for us to learn from.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and I love, that it was pointed out that because there's three of you, there's three different networks, just even your natural ones, before you go on to promoting a book and expanding from there. So that's huge. One thing that just kind of occurred to me is listening to, where Jeffrey and Matthew, where your sweet spot is, or where your, I don't know about sweet spot, that may not be the right word, but you mentioned the kind of student age, college into graduate student age. And Tony, when you set out for this, were you gearing toward that age group, or not necessarily?
Actually, it was the opposite.
Okay.
I wanted a complete package
Yes.
deal that took you from early stage to middle career challenges to senior level challenges. That was a desk reference for a complete career. And once we got to the stage of kind of fomenting a proposal, the publisher actually gave us some very wise advice and said, you know, you really aren't going to be able to have anybody absorb all of that. Narrow it down to a key segment that really works or that you want to start with and keep it under a certain number of words and then come back to us. And we all took early feedback. We sat and huddled as a team and we said, look, the early stage makes a ton of sense because a lot of the feedback that we got, most people's best advice came in the first 5 years of their career
Right.
on all the thousand, input that we got. Secondly, if we're going to give people advice, you want to give it to them earlier in their career and get the value of compounding interest throughout a career and a life well lived. And we just it seemed like such a natural place to go. And when we brought it back to the publisher, they were lockstep in agreement with us.
That's great. So again, the collaboration, made the story stronger. Just there's an example right there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. So another thing that immediately comes to mind though is it, while geared toward that, again, college age, maybe postgraduate, age, young adult, let's go that. That's maybe easier for me to spit out. It seems to me that a lot, and I just think about, large people that jump right into large corporation and just kind of follow that track. It seems to me that while this is geared toward young adults, if you're kind of, for lack of a better term, working on redefining who you are, it feels to me like this is still valuable at 35. To if you're looking for a do-over, for lack of a better term.
We
Jeff,
have
go
had
for it,
some
man.
people. Yeah,
Oh,
go for it, Jeff. You've got some good examples.
I was going to say, we've run into people around town and in our travels who are approaching retirement and aren't sure what to do in the next chapter of life, or people, any point of transition. It seems that individuals are able to take some of the lessons and ideas, and it might be the quotes in particular that inspire them to say, no, it's never too late. And I was going to say earlier, Tyler, in regard to something you said about students, let's just posit that we're all students all the time. We are all consistently
Bingo.
learning. And yeah, we put ages around it for convenience, but it is certainly true that there are some bits of wisdom in this book that are likely eternal at any phase. I'll admit, during final exams, I pretty much picked up and read the resilience chapter as I was like grading exam. And I was like, I wrote this, I should be more resilient. But
We all need reminders.
Life is a roller coaster and you just got to cope and overcome. So I agree that, yes, we wrote it. If we think about the parts that Matthew and I tried to compile from leading practices and what we know from management today, we did have to edit. I mean, there's only so much room in the book, and the publisher had had a cap. And so we did pick things that were a little bit more oriented towards early career. But we have received feedback that people said, oh yeah, I'm going to use this right now, even though
Awesome.
I'm getting ready for career number 3, but I'm still going to go through and think about some of these things before I make choices and make decisions.
Yeah, that's great. That's really cool. So you, I tend to bounce around a little bit, but one thing that I'm also intrigued about is there's lots of people that I shouldn't say lots, but several of the people that I talk to, have written books, most of whom have self-published. So I'm interested. I'm always interested in if you even considered self-publishing, or if you always knew you were going to go the publishing route. And then if there was a discussion there, I guess I'd be interested in that.
It wasn't a big, long discussion. We probably had some discussions around that, but doing a pub, primarily my day job comes first. This
Right.
is a part-time effort, and we needed help. I mean, we needed a writing coach to help us. We needed some help with figuring this stuff out. And it never really crossed my mind to go that other direction. And I got to say, I'm grateful for the maybe it's a little bit of wisdom between the three of us to just ask for help when we didn't know. And we've continued that, even to today. We're not afraid to ask for help. And that includes a little bit of help with the writing of it with a coach. That includes a little bit of help with the marketing of it. Um, it's a team based effort, and somebody once said for every 10,000 books that are started, only a few ever get published, and I think there's a reason for that. This is a complex process, and if you want to do it in a quality way and get a good product at the end, you need to be thoughtful, and you need to be you need good discernment. And I'm very grateful that we asked for help and got help from our publisher.
That's good.
I would say to Tony's point, I think I've written 2 books and published 0 before this one. 2 books and a dissertation or something to that
Sure.
effect. So I think that law of averages is holding true. But as Tony mentioned, so many people along the way, we've learned a tremendous amount about how do you pitch a book? How do you sort
Yeah.
of conceive of a book? Writing coaches for sure, but there's a number of questions that you need to ask yourself. Who's going to read this book? When you envision what that looks like of people holding a book and sort of diving into it, what do they look like? What is their passion? What are they looking to bridge in the next stage of their lives? Do you have a network? And can you don't write a book. I think our publisher told us this, and our publicist. You don't write a book to create a network. You create a network that helps launch a book.
Wow.
So our publisher, Business Expert Press, has been a fantastic partner. They have a really, I think, reputable network within the sort of airport guides, airport, quick plane reads. And they gave us a lot of feedback and then provided us with some fantastic editing. And it really has been a team effort for sure.
I would say, just if we're peeking behind the curtain, Matthew and I had published in a variety of outlets as academics prior to writing the
Yeah.
book.
Sure.
And about every other week, we'd have a conversation and say, well, that didn't go the same at all, did it? That was totally different than what we expected based on experiences in other kinds of publications.
Yeah.
So having someone helping us with a book in particular was extremely valuable.
Yeah.
We definitely benefited from that support network.
Yeah, that's great. And I don't want to get too granular here, but this stuff is piquing my interest, again, because I have more experiences on the self-published side of things. If you don't mind unpacking that journey a little bit, I mean, was this kind of contact or contacts that you guys already had, or did you kind of just go out into that publishing world going, hey, I got an idea? What did that process kind of look like?
I think it was second degree kind of relationships from people that we knew. Um, and some of the authors that we talked to originally about the process itself gave us a few ideas on what publishers to approach. We put it out there for a lot of them. A few of them came back with some outstanding advice, like "you're not ready, and here's why," and like really serious feedback. Um, and then the one that we ended up going with was had been used by an author that we are familiar with. And once we got honed in on what the product was, that was the key. And but I don't think we would have just cold called publishers without a little bit of an assist from some people that we knew, like, hey, here's a few that might be interested in this type of a thing.
I saw two head for the listeners. I saw two heads shaking when Tony mentioned cold calling. So just you can't see the video. I can. I feel like that's worth noting. Like, no, that was not what we were about to do.
That'd be tough. That'd be
Yeah.
tough, I
Yeah,
think.
exactly. Well, and I'm assuming, again, I haven't written a book yet. I'm I have my notes, but I'm assuming that's probably why a lot of people default to that self-publishing, because they don't have a contact. They don't have an introduction that can be made.
I mean, I'll also say, self-publishing has just gotten really easy.
Right.
Really democratized sort of the ability for folks to get their ideas out there. You print on demand, and that's something that I think we really do need to celebrate. I love our publisher; they've been fantastic, but for a lot of my students, for a lot of our clients and executive coachees, we're recommending that self-publishing route as well, just because it's easy. It Someone once told me their philosophy for writing was just pollute the literature, and what he meant by that was, if you've got an idea, put it out there and let sort of folks react to it. Because if you what is it if you hide it under a bushel, no one's going to be able to see it. So there's some really neat tools, and it's exciting to see that avenue available to a lot of authors out there to get started.
Totally agree. Yeah. So I love Jeffrey. Earlier, you were talking about, you went back and read the resiliency chapter again when you were working on finals. Uh, well, I'd be interested in what was something. Well, I've got two questions. I'll start with the first one. What was something that, as you were writing this, surprised you? Either knowledge that you gained or something that one of your partners brought to the table. Like, what was something that was either an aha moment or really surprised you?
I think an aha moment, and it came from an initial round of feedback. The final two chapters of the book ended up being financial literacy and citizenship. And those were topics that I don't think we had on the initial list. They may not have been top of mind. But as we think about potential impact on young professionals today and the route their lives will take, they probably ended up being two, I don't want to say two of the more important topics, because let's face it, all 18 are priority number one. But I think those were two that maybe we didn't anticipate initially, that ended up, as we were writing them and thinking about what shapes lives and what can have major impact, decisions you make at
Yes.
22 or 24 or 26 that really will impact how you live at 60 and 65 and 70. I think that was an aha of the production, was the inclusion of those two topics at the end.
I tell you what, a huge surprise for me was almost immediately in March of 2020 when I started seeing the depth and breadth of responses come into the survey and how people wanted to share their story. And it wasn't like, oh, that was an interesting one. And then, they kind of stood out that way. It was like every one of them had a serious message that they wanted to share. And it just was overwhelming. I just was floor struck. And before I knew it, I had 400 responses from all over the world, people
Wow.
sharing what mattered most in their life. It was, where did you get your best advice? Where do you learn right now? Would you change anything in your career? What's the biggest problem you solved? I mean, and it was just such a, I mean, it just put me in my spot, like, wow, this is a heavy scene, this is really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
I might just jump in there in terms of surprise. Tony talks about people wanting to share their stories, and through the process, we were able to pilot some of these chapters with a class that I teach, which is a sort of an introduction to business class to every single business student that comes into Drake University College of Business. And so that's about 250 students, and we would ask them to read a chapter, go through the reflection exercises, and then tell us what it meant to them. And I tell you, when those essays and those reflections started coming in, that was a huge surprise to me. I was raised in the Midwest in Indiana, a little bit, sort of, you know, um, a little bit of, we're not going to toot our own horn. We're not going to sort of get out there and pound the pavement and promote. We're not going to say all the wonderful things. But when I saw these students react to this material in a way that was, they were asking themselves, and in some of these essays, I'll just read a very brief passage. One of them was like, my main takeaway, this is from one of my students, my main takeaways are that personal stories that are different business professionals have about self-image. This young woman says, I think my biggest takeaway for everything is that my, self-image and worth is important. I choose not to take different opportunities because what if I'm not good enough? My whole self-image has been based off of how other people view me. What really struck with me was what one of the quoted leaders said. Haley Stomp said, "I would have found my voice sooner, and I would have been the hero of my own story more often." And the
Wow.
student says, "I absolutely love this take, and I'm going to be taking it with me for the rest of my life." She says, "I want to be able to tell my own stories of my accomplishments and how I was brave and confident enough to take and run with any opportunity that life threw at me." So that was what sort of kicked my butt into gear to sort of give us the confidence to promote the book, because it really does have the opportunity to change lives, just like this young woman.
That's huge. Yeah. I would, you hear stories of like second grade teachers, hanging on to essays and sending them back to their students. But as you're reading that, I'm like, if you should hang on to that and send that to her in like, in 2 or 3 years and just be like, hey, I want to encourage you with this because like,
Yeah,
you never know. I mean, you're sitting in a classroom. I mean, there's so many great things about classroom learning, right? But like in my mind, you're very protected. And so like hearing that, I'm encouraged, but at the same time, I'm like, I hope in 2 to 3 years she remembers what she said
yeah.
because it's so easy once you walk outside the doors of college or high school, whenever you hit that working world and actually like have all the arrows of crap. I mean, we all know what it is, money, all of the things that try to break us down. I hope she remembers that, and that's awesome that you got that kind of feedback.
The One of the best parts of the book is there's lots of blank pages and room in the margins to
Right.
jot their things.
Yeah.
And when we go back and even read the chapters that we've written, we see our notes in the margins like, oh, that's what I was dealing with at that time.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
When the financial literacy thing, like that one really resonates with me. Prior to moving into the nonprofit space, I was in financial services for a decade. And I just my own personal experience, Tony, I grew up in a very similar town as you, just further north and further west, Sioux Center. And my dad was fantastic with his finances, but he never really took the time to teach me, and so I made a lot of mistakes in my 20s, some that we're kind of just really wrapping up the ramifications of, and so I was super encouraged when I saw that, in the book, that's a piece that you're attacking as well. And I love that it was, one of your, kind of aha moments as well.
And it's critical. I think it was a good lesson for us to be, open to adaptive and have some sensory perception around value creation. It was a missing link that a lot of feedback we got indicated we should work on closing that. And at the end of the day, money's not going to buy you happiness, but the absence of money might create a little unhappiness in your life.
Bingo.
So a little planning ahead can get you off on the right foot and maybe get you in a position to maybe be a little happier down the road.
I
Yeah.
would share years ago, before I came to Drake, I was at another university and I was in the student center. It was end of January, early February, and I overheard some undergraduate students. And one of them said something along the lines of, well, I wasn't going to do anything for spring break, but I just got a new credit card in the mail. So, Miami, here I come. But oh man, compound interest. You have no idea what you're getting into, what 18% represents. And so when the suggestion came to include that in the book, I had that episode in my mind and thought, yeah, that is something that people need to think more about.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, yeah, that could probably be another whole sidebar conversation that we could go way down that. What was one of the biggest challenges or setbacks that you guys hit as you were working through this progress or through this process, and how did you work through that or overcome that?
I'd I
Go for
don't
it,
know.
Tony.
I'd probably say not really a setback. All the stuff we went through the first year or so, I think had to be there in order for us to gel and get clear. And it was a challenging time, but it was that messy middle of clarification and distillation and like how we were going to really come together on the vision. But that needed to happen. The part that was maybe frustrating or a surprise to me was after we were done with what I perceived to be done with the manuscript, um, we really weren't done. It was 6 months away from continued. The process was really beginning to make the final product in the publisher's eyes, and I thought it was done, couple weeks out, good to go, let's go. And you just learn that there's a lot more to it to produce a professional product like a book like this. And you want it to be, all, that professional. And
Absolutely.
to get to that point, there's some other people that need to get involved, and it takes a little time to do it right. And you got to do some plumbing around where it gets available on the online world. And, that stuff takes time. And that was just a huge learning for me.
Yeah.
I think the hardest part was calling it done. Like, is it done? Even after the 6 months that Tony just referenced.
Yeah.
I remember Matthew and I were sitting at a table and he said, Kappen, put down the pen. I was like, is it done? Is it actually done and ready to go out into the world? Writing is never done. It's the first thing they teach us as PhD students. You could revise your dissertation for 50 years.
Yeah.
And so, the challenge of, yes, you get all the text on the page, it gets copy edited, you put in the graphics, you change the graphics, you move it all around, you find 50 typos, et cetera, et cetera. But in some ways, I think the hardest part for us was simply saying, all right, go.
Yeah. Put down the paintbrush, Picasso.
Yeah, there you are. And the first time I saw a friend with book in hand, I thought, hope there are no typos in there.
Tyler, I mean, I would 100% agree with Tony and Jeff. And I'll go back to some of the themes of the book. I mean, the very first sort of section, the very first part is about who am I? And then the next sections are where do I want to go? How will I get there? And what can I learn along the way? I think probably throughout all of it, and as PhDs, we go through a process of training with only 5-6 years of a PhD. They really look at every stroke, every comma, every dotted I and cross T, every theoretical and logical sort of connection. And I would say I generally walked into this process with that same trauma of writing academic articles.
Sure.
And I would say there was some self-doubt. There was definitely some times where we were writing things about, I'll just say, balance. And each one of us are writing a book, and we have other full-time jobs, and families and personal lives and health to attend to. And you're writing a chapter on balance, and you're like, should I really be the one writing this chapter on
Telling people
balance?
about this?
And so it's a physician heal thyself moment, and you sort of start to wonder, obviously, about imposter syndrome yourself. And then if you get behind a little bit and then you feel guilty about it. But I think that opportunity, and Tony crafts this in a lot of his language, it's like you own your own destiny. And Tony, I'm going to say the formula that you've shared with us many times, and that I've subsequently shared with my children and all my students. Event E plus R equals O. Event plus reaction equals outcome. And you may not always be able to control the events, but you can control your reaction to those events. And that, at the end of the day, is what's going to generate an outcome. And I think that's a bit of wisdom, and it's just really, really powerful.
And I think Matthew said it to me yesterday. So these lessons are not one-time things.
It's the gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, that's good stuff. And I guess I like one thing that I think you've all kind of mentioned in one of your answers is how this is you have you're not just authors, I guess is maybe what I'm trying to spit out. You've got careers, and kind of almost multiple aside from this book. And that's been one of the things that's been fun talking to a variety of different guests on this show, but also as sharing my own thoughts with listeners is like, look, it's awesome if you've got your passion for life is in the work that you're doing, but so often we're not fortunate enough to find that. And so sometimes it's about finding that passion outside of work. And not necessarily that that's what you guys did with this book, but I love that there's still kind of that, hey, I might love what I'm doing, but all of a sudden I see this other opportunity for a story that I have in me. And now I find all these other stories of people that I get to tell as well. So I just think this is a unique little add on to this narrative that I'm trying to weave through these podcasts. So I'm grateful that I'm grateful to talk to you guys and have this be, for lack of a better term, a side hustle, like the kids like to say.
Well, and you're hitting on a very important topic, and it goes back to the very first times that Matthew and Jeffrey and I got together. You know, am I doing this right? Touches on the deep humility, but the confidence. You know, but then secondly, foundations for a successful career and a fulfilling life, and that's very important to acknowledge. And it's a thread throughout the book that it's not just about being a successful leader or doing successful career. It's about bringing the full life to bear and having a successful career, but not giving it up to have a great life that you feel really good about. And we think that there's something there for everybody, and we all kind of come to the game every day to try to figure that out. And we three are we do that all the time as individuals, and we think it's got resonance with a lot of people in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that it is foundations for a successful career and a fulfilling life. I mean, at this point, it's gotten cliche because we've heard it so many times, but I think you can't hear it enough. It's like nobody on their deathbed is like, man, I wish I would have spent more time at work. I mean, it just you don't hear that. So it is it's we want to have a successful career, but I love that a big portion of this is succeeding at life too. It's great to be successful at your office, but it's important to be successful outside of your office as well.
Well, and the text is fairly non-prescriptive. It's questions for you to answer
Sure.
for yourself. So, where it's not, there's a bar that we expect every single reader, regardless of starting point, should be doing this, but rather ask yourself these questions, settle on, what's an answer that satisfies you, and then go for it. And if that's not it, you can always change directions as you go. Matthew describes himself as a recovering physicist. I was going to major in chemistry. Here we are, teaching about leadership and thinking about success, fulfilling lives. So there is no one right path or only one path that folks follow over the course of their lives. And hopefully we've accommodated that reality in a constructive way in the text.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
And we play different roles, right? All the time.
Right.
Son, brother, sister, daughter, father, husband, spouse, employee, citizen. So we're barreling through this life, and the totality. You hit it earlier in the beginning of the show today. The totality hits you throughout your life, but we're going through this thing, first time ever for all of this, and it's just important to take a step back, learn from others, use other people's experience is kind of a central theme of the book. But at the end of the day, it's your life. No one else's life is like that. And it's your journey, your life. And that's what's deeply meaningful. If and the three of us have talked about it a lot. If we can help somebody on their journey, that's extremely rewarding for the three of us. That's all in at the end of the day, that's that's the end game for us.
Yeah, that's huge. I love that. I'm gonna do a little bit of a 180 because I've got one question that, and I know we're coming up on our hour. So if any of you have a hard stop, let me know. But I have a question that I love to ask guests that are on my show, and that's why I say I do a little 180 here because it's a little bit going away from where we were talking about. But I love to get insight on people. And one question that I like to ask is, you tell me about your dreams as a kid, or tell me what 7-year-old Tony, Jeffrey, or Matthew wanted to be when they grow up. Some iteration of that.
I think after I saw Star Wars the first time, I wanted to go on a diplomatic mission.
It's all around.
Sounded really cool. I had no idea what it was, but I did end up getting a degree in international politics, and almost went on a diplomatic mission. So an early impression that stuck with me for decades. And now we teach international business, which in many ways is its own diplomatic mission.
There's the through line.
Tony, you want me to go next?
Yeah, go for it, Matthew.
Yeah, Tyler, you'd mentioned that question a little bit. I don't know that I was 7 or 8, but I did have to write a statement of ambition and life purpose for scouting, for my Eagle
Okay.
Scout project there, and I reviewed it. It says something like, "Yeah, I think going to college would be good." But then this line, I was like, hopefully after school, I'm going to start a career that's able to support a moderate lifestyle with little to no financial worries. It's going to allow me to be creative, work with people, and it'll be challenging to keep me interested. My career will also allow me to spend time with my family, which I believe is very important. Speaking of family, I hope to have a wife and the average 2.6 kids, just like all normal families. I ended. I'm very ambitious and I want things from life, but the only thing that I really need is happiness. If I'm poor but happy, then I'm going to be content. Happiness is success. So, what do I want to be when I grow up? I think it was happy.
I love it. And you have 0.4 more kids than you expected.
Overachiever.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Maybe some days I feel like I'd give back 0.4 kids, to lessen the burden. But I'll keep them all. They're all pretty good. Tony.
Mine was more romantic than that, like in a 7-year-old's version of romantic. I saw Robert Redford in Jeremiah Johnson and wanted to be a mountain man. And I love the independence of it. I like the exploration of it. I like the sustainability. They could sustain themselves, build their own home, take on the day. I just loved that exploration part of it. And to this day, I like the outdoors. I allocate ample amounts of time to doing that and exploring different rivers and things like that. And there's a little bit of Jeremiah Johnson in me today, I'm afraid.
That's awesome. Random side note, I just finished reading My Side of the Mountain. You guys familiar with that book?
Whoa!
Yeah, just
Guys, I just texted it to Tony and Jeff. Literally, I said My Side of the Mountain book, one of my favorite books growing up. 100%. That's crazy.
so, but it was actually my wife who, like, she loved it. I never read it, and so she had read it with Ian like a couple years ago, my son, and I just finished at nighttime. We still read to our kids, which I love. And I just finished it with my daughter. But the minute Tony said Jeremiah Johnson, I'm like, oh, My Side of the Mountain. It's a great book. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, so one, I guess the question that I think maybe we'll kind of start winding down on, or at least start landing the plane, as they say. I love the way that your book is set up, and I think that anybody that's on a journey, especially a passion journey, would benefit from reading it. From your perspective, what do you think would be if you had a point from the book? And I know this might be really hard. I'm trying to the best way to. The question I usually ask is, what would you say to someone who is struggling to find their passion, or struggling to get their passion project off the ground? And I'm fine with you answering just that way. But if you have a spot in the book that you'd point them to, that I think that would be a good answer too.
There is the goal setting chapter might be the place to go, but I would say there's a French proverb that says, little by little, a bird makes its nest. And sometimes when I'm dealing with students in the entrepreneurship program who have big ideas and big visions, they get stuck on getting off the ground because they want to go straight to the end. And so one piece of advice is setting up, you want the goals to be ambitious, but they also need to be achievable with the resources you have in a reasonable time frame. So often when people are having trouble getting started, it's the first step and getting the quick win and chunking it out in a way that a person can carry forward. So that's the first thought that popped into my head. So
Perfect.
I'll let the other guys share their bits of wisdom.
Yeah,
Tony,
for finding a passion, I'll jump in real quick, but it'd be brief here, Matthew. And then
yeah,
the purpose one, probably for me, because it goes through a little bit of values and, gifts and talents and things
Yep.
like that, and foundation building on the purpose. But the key is continue to evolve. You're a work in process. Everyone's a work in process. Write in the margins, come back to it later. That would be my main advice, is to continue to chisel away at it over time, and you'll get better and better each time you come back to it.
Awesome.
Tyler, I love the question. And, it's what would you say to someone who's struggling to find their passion or struggling to get their passion project off the ground? What I would say is it's okay. It's okay. And what's more is you're okay.
Yeah.
Like, you are not your project, you're not your job. It's okay. You're okay. I think we all struggle, especially me, every day with, you know, um pursuing our passion. I'm not sure that I have a clearly definable passion, but I'm pursuing my passion every day. I think I have the best job in the world. It's not like an epiphany. I did not walk to the road to Damascus and sort of get struck down with perfect clarity about what my passion is. But someone once told me, as long as you're directionally right and you're probably precisely wrong, if you're pursuing that passion, like Tony said, chipping it away, day after day, then over time that bamboo will sort of bend towards your passion. You'll sort of find and realize that passion in the pursuit of the journey. So I think that's probably what I would tell that person. And I
Yeah.
and people have told me that.
That's great. No, that I love the three perspectives there. That's definitely very, very helpful. Guys, I really appreciate you coming on the show. One other thing that I want to make sure that I ask, but I'm gonna say just because there's three voices here. Number one, I want to make sure people know where to find you. So if the best way is to go to the website, let's do that. Or if you're open to people connecting with you individually on social, or if it's just best to go to the website, that's number one. And then I guess I would also just open it up, because you guys, all three of you, have such unique and great insight. Any final thoughts that you want to leave with listeners?
I just for communication purposes, I think you can go to doingthisrightbooks.com, and that takes you directly to any of us as authors. You can find our emails there, and a few blogs and a few free resources for the book.
Awesome.
Download a couple chapters. Obviously, you can find the book on Amazon, or any of your other local book retailers, and a lot of them here locally in Iowa and the Midwest. But we would love to hear if you've engaged with the book, what it's meant to you. That's, I think, number one.
That's where I was going to go. Is the website's the best place, but for sure, LinkedIn is great to reach out to us at any point, and there's lots of avenues through that website. My parting advice probably is maybe a bit of a challenge. Is get out there and be the light in somebody's day. And if this book helps you build a solid foundation to bring more joy to the world, more joy to your family, more joy to yourself, more joy to others, helps you become a better human being, that brings great joy to us three. And, but the overall challenge, go help people. People want to hear your story, and people are interested in your life, and you never know, you might be the one person to change somebody else's life, and it's just waiting to happen.
Amen. That's awesome.
I guess a last bit of advice, building on these two, I would say that, and we've alluded to it already in our comments, is that the three of us are asking ourselves this question every day as well. So if you don't feel like you got the answer, we're in the same process. And so we're all rowing the boat down the river together. So yes, help others, they will help you, but rest assured that we're all in this together. And so if you don't have the answer right now, keep plugging away and you will find it.
Plugging away, chipping away, chopping wood. I mean, that's the metaphor. Tony,
Totally, we've got forestry metaphors for days.
I can't tell you how many times Tony sent us gifts of chopping wood, and that just kept us like, we just gotta chop wood. Let's just wake up and chop wood.
We got to keep writing. We got to keep editing. We got to keep at it. We're chopping wood today, boys.
Chopping wood.
That's awesome. This is a lot of fun. You guys got a fantastic book. To the listeners, this is one of those resources that can definitely help move you along, no matter if you're still trying to figure out what's important to you, if you're just starting the journey, if you're stuck in the middle, or if you feel like you're getting toward the end of your journey. I would definitely send this book out as a recommendation. So guys, thanks again for being on the show. It was a pleasure talking with you. It's fun to see you, the banter that you have between you. So I know there's some solid friendships there as well. So to all the listeners, thank you for being along on this journey. I just ask that like these guys said, be a light, find a way that you can be a light to someone else, carry them along and keep pursuing your passions. Talk to you soon.
If you have questions or would like to contact us, please check out the show details for contact information. Thanks for listening to the Pursue Your Passion podcast.